Hello everyone, this is Coach Oliver once again. Today we will discuss a game by one of the greatest players of all time, if not the greatest player in the history of the game, Robert Fischer, or famously known as Bobby Fischer. It's actually his birthday, March 9, 1943. So in relation to Lagrave's game against Laporte, I have a feeling that Lagrave played Grunfeld. Not only is Grunfeld his bet line, but probably a tribute to one of the greatest players of all time, who played the Grunfeld in the game of the century against Donald Byrne. Let's go back to that famous game of the century. Fischer was black against Donald Byrne. Happy birthday, Bobby. Okay, here Donald Byrne started with knight f3. Fischer played knight f6, c4, g6, knight c3, bishop g7, d4, castles, bishop f4, and now the Grunfeld with d5. Queen b3, d takes on c4, queen takes c4, c6, e4. Okay, white controls the middle. That's one of the strategic ways against the Grunfeld. Knight b7, rook into d1, knight b6, attacking the queen on c4, queen c5, bishop g4, developing his last piece, his last minor piece, bishop g5. Okay, Fischer was still very young at this time, 14 years old. So Donald Byrne was probably thinking that, okay, a young player, less experience. Okay, let's just play this bishop once again, but at the expense of development, trying to surprise his young opponent. But he will regret his decision, because the young Fischer is just so brilliant with knight a4. Fischer showed his promise here. Yeah, a very promising player at a tender age of 14 with knight a4. What a sacrifice. White played queen a3, but let's take a look at knight takes a4. Fischer has knight takes e4 here. If the queen moves back to c2, for example, removing the defender on f3, takes on f3, black regains the piece, and white structure is as bad with the king in the middle. All right, so after knight a4, another waste move, queen a3. Knight takes c3 for the young Bobby. Takes on c3, a pawn on e4. Black has a double attack here. Bishop attacking the rook and the queen. But look at the king on e1. Fischer ignores the threat, queen b6. White played bishop c4 because if he captures the rook on f8, bishop will just take it, beating the queen. If you go queen b3, Fischer has knight takes c3. You cannot take the knight. There's a pin on the queen with bishop b4, right? And if you take that queen on b6, 8 takes b6, it opens up the rook on a2, the knight attacks on d1. It's just pretty bad. Rook e8 is also coming. Bishop b4 is coming. Oh my god, that king surely will be dead soon. So bishop c4, white tries to castle here. He finally thinks of castling, but it's too late. Knight takes c3, nice sacrifice by the young Fischer. In the game, bishop c5 was played, but let's take a look at queen takes g3. There's rook a e8 or rook f e8, right? Pin on the king. And if you castle, just rook takes e7. Two bishops, extra pawn, isolated pawn on d4, rook d8, rook d7, bishop takes f3. He went for bishop c5. And here, Fischer played rook f e8, check first, king f1. And that's why this is called the game of the century, because of this move. What is that move? Let's turn to that. Okay, the great Fischer with bishop e6. One of the most beautiful moves in the history of the game. Imagine a bishop retreating on e6 when his queen was under attack. Wow, it's just wow. So white was like, okay, let's take it. Takes on c4 check, king to g1, knight e2 check, king f1, we have the windmill. Knight h d4, takes the pawn first, go back to e2, king f1 without the pawn on d4, now the knight is protected by the bishop on c3. It's attacking the rook, and also threatening, takes on b6 first. King goes back to g1, takes on b6, discovered attacking the queen, the knight is still attacking the rook on d1. Queen d4, rook a4 first. Nice move. The rook attacks the queen with the protection on the c4 bishop. Queen takes b6, knight takes d1. Okay, now Fischer here displayed his harmonious skill with his pieces. Yeah. After h3, rook takes a2, knight and rook attacking f2. King h2, knight takes f2, hitting the rook on h1. Rook goes to e1, does take, queen d8 check, bishop f8, knight takes e1, bishop d5, knight into f3, knight e4, queen b8, b5. By looking at this position, I was like, oh, wow. Look at the connection of the pieces. Pawn on c6 to b5, to d5. Bishop protects e4. It protects the rook on a2. The coordination of the pieces. Yeah. Pieces in harmony. Pawn to g6, pawn to g6, king. The bishop into f8. h4, h5 is still the same thing. Yeah. From f7 to g6 to h5, c6 to b5, c6 to d5, bishop to e4, bishop into a2. Wow. Knight goes to e5, just king g7, king g1. Now without the pin, it's time to work. Bishop c5 check. Look at how the minor pieces and the rook deliver the checkmate. Knight g3, knight's turn, king e1, bishop's turn, the light square bishop's turn, king c1, the knight's turn, king b1, knight c3, king c1, and the final move. The game of the century by the great Bobby Fischer, playing the Grunfeld. Right, probably that was the reason why Lagrave played the Grunfeld today, because it's Fischer's birthday. We don't know, but it's just speculation. But it was the other way around. It was Laporte who won the game. playing the white pieces. All right, so I hope you like our special presentation for our legend. It's his birthday, the great Bobby Fischer. This is Coach Oliver. Stay safe, everyone.